There's our knock. All right, Joe, thank you. I can see Joe. Welcome. My name is Mark Monson. I'm actually the vice chair here, and Ned is here. Hey, just good timing. Joe, who is on Zoom with us this evening, has asked that I at least conduct this. I'm going to allow him to preside from afar, but asked me to conduct this meeting because I'm here present. This is the Board of Adjustment meeting. Today is November 10th, 2020. Also present on Zoom with is Lorraine Sorensen, and then, of course, Steve Bush and Annette Bigler and I are here. I think that, oh, yes, okay, she's here, good. Tonight we are here, we have a couple of items on our calendar here. The first is the approval of minutes from October 14th of 2020, and we were provided those. I didn't see any changes that need to be made. Joe, you're usually pretty good about taking a fine-tooth comb to these. Have you
that's
seen
usually the best at this, but I did notice on the fourth item where it says other business, there's an extra word in between parking and requirements. It says Bozzoli requested information in regards to parking requirements. That extra in should go away.
Okay.
But that's the only Scrivener I found.
This is, as I said before, Joe's very good at taking a fine-tooth comb from that. Any other changes that we need to do? Otherwise, we will entertain a motion to approve these minutes.
Isn't Lorraine's last name S-E-N? Are we talking about October 14th?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes? No. S-O-N or S-E-N for Lorraine's last name?
Lorraine,
S-E-N.
S-E-N, okay. We need to just make sure that her name is spelled correctly. Anything else in it that you can see?
I didn't see any other changes.
Substantively, they look good to me as well. So do we have a motion to approve these minutes with those couple of changes?
I approve the minutes as provided to us tonight, and then with those minor changes that we discussed.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 And that sounds unanimous. Just in case, is there anyone in opposition to this? All right, hearing none, those are approved. The next item is we have a conditional use permit. We actually have two conditional use permits that we're going to be considering this evening. And we will turn the time over to Amy for a presentation.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and start with conditional use permit for Southview Avenue. Joe and Lorraine, can you see the screen okay?
I can.
Okay,
Yes, very clear.
perfect. And again, me and this clicker. There we go. I was afraid, yeah, point it down first. Okay. So this is a conditional use permit for 224 Southview Avenue. The proposal is that the applicant, the City of Moscow Engineering Department, has requested a conditional use permit to develop an above-ground water booster station within an enclosed building on the subject property located at 224 Southview Avenue within the multifamily residential zone. This is a new above-ground pumping station with approximately 700 square feet concrete masonry building to house the station. This new station will replace an existing below-ground pump that is sized for only domestic flows and currently provides inadequate fire flows for the zone. The new station is also identified as a capital project within the City of Moscow's 2012 Comprehensive Water System Plan. This is an aerial of the subject property. You can see, as indicated, this is the location within that parcel where the booster housing station will be. As I stated before, the zoning is multiple family residential R4. Parcels to the north and south are also multiple family. Parcel to the east is zoned low density residential, and the parcel to the west is zoned motor business. The R4 zone permits public services and utility facilities as a conditionally permitted use. And this includes facilities like fire stations, police stations, National Guard armories, fire training facilities, pumping stations, electric substations, and telephone switching station facilities. The proposed booster pumping station is included within this grouping of public service facilities. So again, here's the zoning map showing multiple family to the north and the south. To the east here you have R1, and to the west, motor business. So to continue with the zoning, requirements for R4, as far as setbacks go, the front setback is required to be 15 feet, rear 20 feet, and the sides of a combined total of 15 with a minimum of 5 on one side. The height restriction is 40 feet. And for all uses other than dwellings, a type A landscape buffer is needs to be provided along the property lines abutting any of those. So any zones that are SR, R1, R2, and R3. This would not apply to R4 zones. So the streets and access, there's a vehicular access approach off of Southview. Southview is a 60-foot right-of-way with both curb, gutter, and sidewalk on both sides. The site will be visited by a city staff person once during a routine workday to inspect the facility and ensure proper operation of the station's components. This is the subject property's front view. This is a view looking west on Southview Avenue, and the view looking east. And this is looking south down Myrtle. As I stated before, this is the parcel with the location of the housing station here. This is an image of the site plan showing the contours of the topography at the site. It shows a steeper slope here to the east with a more gradually sloping topography here on the north and south. Again, closer up of that substation. Here are elevation drawings showing how this particular booster station will be set back into an excavated portion of that topography, and again from the other direction. This is an example of the White Avenue booster station that was approved and constructed per the 2015 CUP. And here is an image of the Taylor Avenue booster station that was also approved at that same conditional use permit. So I know you're all familiar with the relevant criteria and standards. Here they are for you once again. And it is based upon those relevant criteria and standards that staff would recommend approval for the conditional use permit for the public service utility facility located at 225 Southview. And I'd be happy to take any questions, or we can proceed to the other location and take all the questions at the end, whatever you'd prefer.
Does anybody have any questions on this one? This is the one south of town, near where they're putting the new
Correct.
police station, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions based on that, or we'll just
No, I'm good. Yeah.
march on? I suspect that the next one is going to be very similar to what we're talking about, so please, Amy, we'll
All righty.
listen to the other one as well.
Switch over. Okay, so the next conditional use permit application is for the location at 1250 Orchard Avenue. As I stated before, this is a conditional use permit submitted by the City of Moscow Engineering Department requesting the conditional use of a public service and utility facility located at 1250 Orchard Avenue. This one sits in the low-density, single-family residential zoning district. This booster station will be housed in a 900-square-foot concrete masonry building. The station will replace an existing below-grade pump station, which is located a block to the south of the Ponderosa Orchard intersection and is currently undersized for fire flow and only serves the northern portion of the booster zone. This is also, as the other, a new station that's been identified as capital project within the City of Moscow's 2012 Comprehensive Water Plan. So again, we have the aerial subject to properties here on the corner of Landy Drive right here and Orchard. Zoning for this one is R1, which is low density residential. Parcels to the north, east, and south are also zoned R1. Properties to the west are zoned moderate density, single-family residential, R2. Within the R1 zone permit, public service and utility facilities are subject to the conditional use permit as well. This includes, as I said before, facilities like fire stations, police stations, National Guard armories, fire training facilities, pumping stations, electric substations, telephone switching facilities. The proposed booster station is included in this grouping of public facilities. Again, here's the zoning showing the R1 here and R2 on this adjacent side. So to continue with the zoning, front setbacks for R1 are 25 feet from the front, 20 in the rear, combined total of 15 on the sides with a 5 minimum, and the height is limited to 35 feet. Again, for all uses other than dwellings, they require a type A landscape buffer. That does apply in this case. This substation will have a type A landscape buffer around the perimeter. Vehicular access is via Lanny Drive. Lanny is a 70-foot right-of-way with curb, tree, lawn, and gutter and sidewalk on both sides. An Orchard, just west of Lanny Drive, is a 45-foot paved right-of-way with intermittent curb, gutter, and sidewalk primarily only on the east side of the street. The site will be visited, as the other one will, by a city staff person just to maintain proper functioning of the facility. Subject property is here. This is looking west from Lanny Drive and south from Orchard Avenue. This is site plan of the subject property. As I stated, this green buffer here is the type A landscape buffer and the housing station here. Elevations of this particular property not intended to, or will not be excavated, will sit right at grade. And so again, here we have our relevant criteria and standards, which you're familiar with. And it is for those reasons that we recommend approval for the booster station located at 1250 Orchard Avenue. And I'd be happy to take any questions on either location at this time.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Amy, I have a clarification question, and I'm trying to find where I read it, but I think it applies to the Indian Hills site. Isn't it planned to have a park around it, so a landscape buffer wouldn't necessarily apply to the initial construction on that side? Is that?
It is true, yes. That it is intended to be constructed within a park that is to be developed in the future. R4 does not require it to have a landscape buffer, but it will have quite a buffer, being that it is surrounded by the park.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, not of staff, no.
Thank you very much.
All right.
All right, with that, we are going to open the public portion of this hearing and take any public comment. We'll first invite the applicant to come forward, and while you're coming forward, I'm going to just note for the record, we received a letter from Nancy Cheney dated November 4th. We're going to submit that for the record. I'm going to just hand that to you. She's got some questions that you may want to look through, and if you can address those, that would be great, and then we'll certainly listen to it. Be sure to state your name and your address for the record.
Wonderful.
And then we'd love to hear about the project.
Good evening. Thanks for your time. Appreciate being here. I'm Tyler Palmer. I'm the Deputy City Supervisor for the City of Moscow. I oversee the Public Works and Services Group for the city, which includes the Water Department, and this is obviously a piece of Water Department infrastructure that's pretty critical to our operations. As was laid out, the booster stations, anywhere that you have hills, especially like we do in Moscow, we have differences in elevation, and maintaining consistent pressures in our system is really important, both for domestic use, but most especially for fire flows, making sure that we meet the fire flow requirements of the city. We've been going through a process for the last several years, replacing a number of our booster stations. And this is the next in the line of booster stations that we need to get replaced, brought up to modern standards, and make sure that we're meeting those fire flow requirements. And so really a critical piece of our infrastructure. Several of the facilities have already been built. We have one on Taylor, one on White, and one up toward the Vista tank. We really try to take into account the aesthetics of these facilities, making sure that they don't detract from the community, but rather are pieces of public infrastructure that we can be proud of. And then in addition to that, we also take into account things like the noise and disruption, especially since a lot of these are in residential areas, serving the homes in the areas. And so that's something that, as we look at these projects, we look at the construction materials, trying to make sure that the building's well insulated. We look at the air conditioning units, trying to make sure that they're efficient, that they meet all noise requirements. And then we also look at the backup power, which is critical on these facilities. If we lose power, these are the types of facilities that, often in a large fire event, power can be lost. And so it's all the more critical in those events that we have these facilities functioning in order to continue to provide fire flow. But the generator technology has come such a long way, and we're really able to very much minimize the noise from these generators. They just really don't make much noise at all. If you think about, the way a diesel truck sounded back in the 80s versus the way that they sound now, and then you translate that to a generator, which is very well insulated and encased, you can be standing next to it, and it's just kind of like a whir. They're pretty quiet units. And so these are facilities that we have built that we're confident that we can build in a way that will be minimally disruptive to the community and massively helpful when it comes to the infrastructure. Scott, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add.
I'm Scott Bontrager. I'm the city engineer. In addressing Nancy Cheney's comments, which Tyler's pretty much addressed the most of them here, but in relation to the exterior wall-mounted HVAC and exhaust ventilation system, like he said, these are highly efficient units. These are in operation less than 70 decibels up close at the property line. You'll hardly hear them. Energy efficiency that she had brought up, rationale for choosing the various types of pumps. These are all they're going to have smaller pumps for the daily use of water and then larger pumps for fire flow. So the pumps themselves, you won't actually hear from inside the facility, and then the energy efficiencies is about as efficient as you can get with the various stages to the pumps, the way that they ramp up, ramp down with energy use, instead of just on, off. Emergency preparedness, type of fuel system for the generator. These will be natural gas with backup for propane, which is a highly efficient generator. These all have a type 3 sound enclosure, so like Tyler was saying, you barely hear them. They're very well insulated. The portion of the community served by the facility, be able to rely on it, disaster relief. These basically are here to keep all the water systems flowing during power outages. Aesthetics,
I might touch on that a little
yeah,
bit.
talking about the MIOC
Right.
system.
Just circle back, just a couple things. Scott mentioned this, that our pump selection on this is something that we really spent a lot of time on as we looked at this, because we very much want to make these as efficient as possible. The city, we have, not only is our utilities are our biggest electricity consumers within the city. We use a lot of power. These are highly energy intensive operations, and so we really try and focus on that. As Scott mentioned, we use a different pump setup for our service pumps than we do for our fire pumps, because those are the ones that are in operation more consistently. So it's a more expensive pump. And we also put what's called a VFD, a variable frequency drive on these. Back in the day, a pump was like a light switch. It was just either on or off. And so you'd expend a whole bunch of energy and a whole bunch of noise, just like a motor, kicking on, revving up, shutting off. And what a variable frequency drive does is it just allows us to ramp up and ramp down. It's like a dimmer on a light switch. And so we're able to very much, it's far more energy efficient, and we're able to work on the harmonics a lot better, and we get the sound dialed in. And so that's something that will be really great. We've gone with facilities like this, with this size of generator, we've gone to a natural gas setup. When we look at our potential disruptions in our area, we're at very low risk for the type of earthquake that will potentially disrupt natural gas flow. So we have very, very few instances of natural gas disruption. But as Scott mentioned, these are dual fuel generators. So it gives us the option to convert over to propane if for whatever reason there is a disruption to natural gas. And propane is a fuel that we generally can get and get pretty quickly in the time of an emergency. Talking about the aesthetic quality of the water, what was mentioned was that there was a pretty good aesthetics for a while, and that there had been a noticed drop-off just recently. And Mrs. Cheney is not wrong about that. We'd made some changes to the system. The north side of the town is always a more challenging part of town for our aesthetics in the water. It kind of dead ends a lot up in that area, and that always causes problems. We have a basalt aquifer that's high in iron and manganese, and so it tends to put flock into the lines. And we do a lot of filtration and flushing to try and avoid that. I think more so what she's noticing than any booster impact of late is that we had some system operations that we had to update based on some tank maintenance recently. And anytime we update system operations, it will change the flows within the pipes themselves and kick up some sediment. And so this facility won't have an impact on that. One of the other things that Mrs. Cheney brings up is chlorine distribution. And the chlorine distribution will be improved with this. When we have facilities that are more outlying where we're able to inject chlorine, we're able to more accurately control our available chlorine within the system. And so when we have the ability, rather than just at some centralized site where we have to inject a lot so that we make sure that by the time it gets out to the perimeter of the system, we still have enough free chlorine that we can guarantee disinfected water. If we have the ability with sites like this to inject the chlorine closer to the site where it's needed, it's basically like using a scalpel instead of a machete. It gives us the ability to really dial in that chlorine and dose appropriately for the area. And so if anything, this will actually improve the chlorine dosage for the community.
Great, thank you very much. Anything else?
That's why I was checking to see if she had any other notes on this.
No, I appreciate you looking at that. Again, that was the one piece of correspondence that we received, and I thought it would be prudent for you to take a look at that and
Sure.
and address those in the record.
And I would just mention that we very much appreciate the questions. We really love it. Scott and his staff, my staff, put a lot of time into this stuff, and we really appreciate it when people take it seriously enough. It's expensive
Yeah.
city infrastructure, and we very much appreciate people taking a look at it and providing us with questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, in relation to the exterior lighting, this will have
Oh, yeah, thanks, Scott.
low intensity LED lighting that's only turned on when someone's present, so for the most part, it's just gonna be off. And that's just mainly for maintenance, so when they come up to the facility, they can see as they get into the doors. Structural stability, she had asked about if there's gonna be soil testing, and in relation to its vicinity next to the detention pond and everything, all of it's being looked at by geotechnical engineer that's gonna analyze the ground itself, structural engineers that's gonna use the data, and everything's gonna be designed with architect and the structural engineer. So it's going through the full gamut of everything, so. But that appeared to be everything that was in Nancy Cheney's letter.
Great, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for either of these two gentlemen?
I have one. I heard the term MIOC system, and I'm familiar with those, but what I wasn't sure on was, do these pump houses have that, or is that related to water distribution rather than fire distribution?
So the MIOX, the on-site generation, the MIOX system, Joe, is something that we are transitioning toward those systems. In the industry, the gas chlorine has become, I guess, less and less favored because of the health risks, the danger that it can pose to operators and even to the community if there's a leak. And so these on-site generation systems are far safer and more efficient in that regard. And so we will be doing on-site generation. This is something that we're transitioning the entirety of our water production system over to, is on-site generation units. So the new well 10 will have on-site generation and several of these boosters. And so this will be set up for a MIOC system for on-site generation. So that is both, so our domestic flow and our fire flow, there's no distinction between those. The fire water is just the domestic water. And so that it's the same water, same disinfection system for both of those.
Perfect. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yep.
Anything else?
This is Lorene.
Go ahead, Lorraine.
How difficult would it be to transition from gas mains to propane if there was a failure in the town gas system, for example?
It's a really quick process. These systems are built for that. So basically, Maureen, there's a valve that we turn, and it's almost as simple as a propane barbecue tank, where it's got a, you screw it in, you turn a valve, so it transitions the fuel feed over from one to the other, and really that's about it. So we're talking, you know, a matter of minutes, not hours.
Okay, thank you.
I had one question, and just, we always talk about nuisances, and the issue of noise was raised, and you've addressed that, but I think I know the answer to this, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. With regard to the station that you put on White Avenue, and I think the one on Taylor, I'm assuming there haven't been any complaints from the neighbors as a result of either lighting or noise at this point, or have there?
We had some initial complaints actually about lights from the Vista station. And that's what led to some adjustments to our lighting plan. We actually changed out the lights on the boosters based on that feedback that we got from some residents in the vicinity, and really looked at our need for lighting. There were some lights there that were on the exterior that were coming on. They were on a photo eye, and they just came on and stayed on all night. And they were far brighter and not as shielded as we would have liked. That, you know, that we definitely meet all of our dark sky ordinances, but they were still a brighter profile and on for longer than we needed. So we reviewed that based on that feedback from Vista, and so this station, as well as the other ones that we've built since, reflect those updates.
And then in terms of noise?
So we have not fielded any noise complaints on any of these.
Okay. Thank you. All right, gentlemen.
I had one question.
go ahead,
that,
Steve.
that, there's some pretty detailed drawings here of the two facilities, but between the two proposals here, it says between the square footage is between 700 and 900 square feet, and I was wondering if they were more firmed up in that, or is there a reason one's larger than the other? I saw the capacity that was being created was a little bit more in the other, but I'm just curious why there was such a range of square footage.
Yeah, the one facility that's a little bit larger has the ability to add a third fire pump because it needs to have additional flow to that facility. So just physically takes more room to add that third pump in the future.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. We have one person left here with us. We will open it up to anybody who has any comments one way or the other on this. Ma'am, if you're interested in coming up and making a comment, we'd love to hear it. Okay, thank you. Seeing nobody else here, we'll go ahead and close the hearing with regard to these conditional use permits, and we'll discuss these. So, does anybody have any concerns about either of these? I remember doing this for the one up on Warbonnet, and I think the one on White Avenue, and that's been, I was reminded that was 5 years ago. It's hard to believe it's been half a decade ago.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I do remember that. I don't have any concerns with this project. I don't know if, Lorraine, do you have any concerns, or Annette?
I do not have any concerns.
I have no real concerns. I'm only thinking about their scalability, particularly with the Orchard Avenue one, because there's such a lot of, that seems to be an area where the city is developing out rather rapidly. And how long will this capacity be sufficient?
And we will, that's a good question, Lorraine. We'll have the applicant come up, and he can answer that quick question for us. I think he has probably a good answer for that.
Sure, the capacity for Orchard Avenue, I mean, they take into account the future planning on this, so everything is built to be able to withstand what's at least for the next 20, 30 years.
Okay.
And it has, I mean, with the expansion abilities too, to add that third pump, it can continue to grow.
Okay, thank you very much. Did you catch that,
Thank you.
Lorraine? Were you able to hear that?
Yes, I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Annette, any
No,
concerns?
I appreciate that they're forward thinking of making it big enough to put that third pump in, and yeah, hopefully our town will keep growing.
Okay. Steve, anything that you'd like to add?
No, I don't have any concerns about the project at all.
How about you, Joe?
I do, and we're going back in time. I probably should have asked this when staff members were actually still up there, but the facility that's built into grade, if I remember right, one of the others was that way, and there was a concern at that point in time that kids could get up on top of that roof easily. It doesn't seem like that was a problem over time, but maybe someone could address that now, whether that is or isn't an issue.
All right, we'll have the applicant come up and address that quickly for you.
Sure, I mean, same, that was on the Vista one up there, and be very similar to this one where we'll end up putting a security fence around it if necessary. The one up on Vista ended up carving into the hillside there a lot more than initially expected, so yeah, that one does have a security fence around it now. We'll, the design's not completely finalized on this, and depending on the topography that we end up with, we may need to have a security fence around this one as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'm not asking that question, Mark, to suggest that we require it or condition it. I was curious to know how, what the result was from 5 years ago. And I'm assuming that the city is going to want to protect their facilities as needed and will self-impose whatever they need. I just wanted to pose the question.
Okay, thank you. Well, ma'am, did that raise any questions that you wanted to address? I'll give you the opportunity if necessary. If not, we'll move on.
I live right next to, or on the orchard, right next to this. I'm just coming to find out more
Okay.
about what was happening there.
Okay.
So, sorry, I missed the beginning of the discussion.
Well, the comment, we have one member of the audience who we had a little bit new information, and I wanted to make sure that she had an opportunity to make any comments that she felt necessary. And since she's not near the microphone, I'll just repeat what she said. She's a resident there near the orchard one, and it just was here to kind of observe the goings-on and see what was going on. So anyway, we just want you to feel welcome to make any comments as you see fit. Now, that being the case, does anybody have a motion? We need to take these up separately because they're technically two different conditional use permits, but,
Mr. Chair, can I interrupt for a moment?
Sure.
When you do take the vote, would you mind doing it by roll call?
Yes.
Because we have people on Zoom, I want to make sure that everybody's accounted for.
okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. All right, I'll entertain a motion if anybody's got one.
I have a question prior to potentially raising a motion. There's two separate buildings, two separate proposals, but there's one list of criteria proposed with the staff's verbiage. I'm assuming that 1 through 7 criteria is intended to be the same for both.
Correct, yeah, in both packets, there should have been,
There's two.
yeah, in each respective staff report, there should be the 7 criteria on each.
There is, yes.
I thought so.
Okay. Yeah, so both criteria apply to both locations.
Okay, I'm looking at one, and I only got one that actually had responses in blue, where there was written comments to those 7 criteria.
And Joe, I think you might be looking at the application, because that's the one where I've got.
Yeah, the application has
Yeah.
the comments
Yes.
in blue.
Yeah,
Yes. So
Yeah,
that
this is,
said, I think that verbiage works very well for all 7 of those criteria. There was a paragraph written for criteria 2 justification. And I would actually like to make a motion that we approve this based on those 7 criteria and those responses with one Scribner correction. Under criteria 2 justification in the second paragraph, it says excavated portion of the slope, and that word should be portion.
okay, Joe, so we have 2 CUPs here. So are you, let's deal with one.
They want us to do them separately, so
Let's
my
do that
motion
separately,
would
just
be
for clarity of
for
the record, yeah.
Indian Hills to approve the conditional use permit application with the responses to those 7 criteria, given the one Scribner.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Annette has seconded that. And Joe, so this is for the
Indian Hills.
Indian Hill site. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the conditional use permit for the Indian Hill site. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Was there
Aye.
any, are there any opposed? Okay, so it appears to be unanimous on that. Okay. Number 2. Do we have a motion on number 2, or Joe, do you want to renew your motion for, or make a separate
I
motion?
was just gonna say, I can do the same thing again, but before we do that, do we need to have a findings of fact motion for this one? Or do we do those separate too? That's actually more of a question for staff.
All we need is a motion to approve. When we do the relevant criteria and standards meeting, all of that will be written up, and then at that point, you can approve those or make changes or adjustments at that point.
Okay, well then I would like to make the same exact motion with the same exact Scribner change for the pump house on Orchard and Lanny.
And that is the Ponderosa site. Okay. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second that one.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none, that appears to be unanimous as well. Okay. We've got a meeting is it Thursday of next week?
The
The
19th.
On the 19th, okay. I can't remember what day that is, but that's next week sometime.
Thursday, yes.
Thursday. Are we going to take up the findings of the,
Yes, that was
Approval at
scheduled
that time
for
as well?
that,
Okay.
correct.
okay. Any other board communications that we need to take up this evening?
Not at this time.
Okay. Joe, anything else from the chair from afar that you want to bring up?
No, well, the only thing is I won't be able to make that 5:30 meeting.
Okay.
So as we just need to make sure that there's a quorum for that night. And I don't think I can zoom in that early either.
I think we sent out an email earlier today with availability. I think we'll still be able to make a quorum.
Okay.
We'll connect this week and make sure that we have a quorum for that meeting. Thanks for letting us know.
Okay.
No problem.
Well, with that, we'll go ahead and we'll adjourn. So thank you for being here, staff. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you, ma'am, for being here as an interested member of the public. We appreciate that. And we will adjourn until next Thursday evening at 5:30.